What is up, gang? Welcome to the hip hinge tutorial. I'm Coach Samantha, and today we're going to be talking about what is a hip hinge, how do you do it, why does it matter, when do you use it, and all of that good stuff. So I'm actually on a call with my group coaching call for my one-on-one personal training online fitness coaching clients. So they are here and observing, and so we meet every single week, every Friday at noon Central Time. We hop on a group call, we talk through challenges, we go through what went well this week, what maybe didn't go so well this week. And so this is an opportunity for everybody a part of the team to come onto the call, ask any questions they have before we go into the weekend. Especially great for if we're going out to eat, the Super Bowl is happening. I have sent out that guide. If you are not on my email list and you're somebody who wants some recipe ideas for the weekend, especially for the Super Bowl, hit me up. I will send you that little PDF link. And also, throughout this conversation, I'm going to be referencing my girlies here on the call. Hey, girl. And also, if you're on Instagram, please leave any comments, questions, any of that good stuff as we go. I will chit chat for real this time for maybe about 10 minutes. This is a really pretty quick training overview. I will post this to my feed afterwards so that you have it. But with this, once I finish chit-chatting and yapping, we'll go all the way back up to the top to start with questions. So the sooner you leave the question, the sooner and more likely it is to be answered. So without further ado, let me hit record for my girlies over here. Hello. So today we are talking about the hip hinge. And for the benefit of those on Instagram, again, I'm on a group call with my one-on-one coaching clients. If you don't know me, my name is Coach Samantha. Sammy Lee Fitness is our team, and we help women who are working full-time lose body fat, build confidence, build muscle without all of the BS. So today is going to be kind of a no BS explanation of what the hip hinge is. So let's just start with the overview of what the F am I even talking about when I say hip hinge. If you've ever done an RDL before, or a deadlift or a squat, which I assume you probably have, you know what I'm talking about. You may just not know that's what it's called. When we're talking about your hip hinge, what we're really talking about is your ability to send the hips back so that your glutes and hamstrings are able to take over the majority of that lift. But it also involves bracing the core and a few other things like neutral spine that we'll talk about. So I want to make sure it's very clear the hip hinge is not just bending over. It is being strategic about putting our hips back so that we can target the right muscles. So starting with this, let me go ahead and just start off with the common mistakes I see a lot of time with the hip hinge. First thing first is literally just thinking that we're bending over. It's kind of hard for me to unlearn it. But when you think about what we're trying to do, we're trying to create space so that instead of just bending forward, you see how my back then has to round or overcompensate in order to stay close to the body. What we want to do instead is send the hips all the way back. And you'll notice here, I have a slight bend in the knee. I'm not squatting, but slight bend, pushing hips back. One drill that you can really do to help with this, if you find a wall, if you find, something vertical and sturdy by you, what you can do is do this little test. And I want you to just kind of see this in real time. If I'm just bending over, I'm not even touching the wall here. There's plenty of space between my butt and the wall, okay? That's not what we want. We want to be sending the hips back. So let me show you the difference between just bending over and sending the hips back. You see how soon I hit that? That kind of hurt. But like here's, again, bending forward, and here's reaching hips back. Oh, I'm a little far away. You'll have to play with the distance. But find the spot where you can really send the hips back. And what I might recommend when you're starting this to set up is start against the wall and then just put your feet forward a little bit and bend over to find the spot where that feels like a comfortable hinge. And then as you play with this, you can keep sending the hips back and forward. I want you to think about your hips in a deadlift, in a squat, in a RDL as back and forth instead of up and down. That's really going to help you understand that we're not just trying to move the weight from bottom to top. We're trying to send the weight back here because, little anatomy lesson as I'm sitting here, when your glutes are active, when we're talking about the complex here, you've got your quadriceps, you've got your hamstrings that come all the way up, and you've got your glutes. Okay, and the glutes, there's 3 different glutes, but for the most part, we're talking about the glute maximus, the big booty cheek muscle. With this, if we are, in general, putting more of a bend in the knee and the knees come over the toes, that's usually where the quads are going to be taking over more. That's just anatomy. For most people, everybody's got different length femurs. Femur is this thigh bone. So it really does kind of depend on your physique. But for the most part, bent knees over toes typically means quads are taking over. And when we have a little bit more of a hinge, this allows, just because of the way gravity and anatomy works, for the hamstrings and the glutes to really take over. Straighter legs are going to be more hamstrings. A little bend is going to put that into the glutes, in the booty cheeks. So if you've been trying to do your RDLs and you feel them in your quads for some reason, that would be really disturbing. But if you feel them not in your glutes, but in your hamstrings or your back, it could be because you're not properly hinging to send those hips back. I can't lie, girl. I'm a little out of breath. So that's one mistake I see, is just not actually hinging. You are instead just bending forward. And with that, another huge thing I see with this is we don't have a strong upper body. What I mean by that, if you saw my live, what was it, last week, we talked about how to brace your core and how to make sure that you are keeping your spine safe throughout these movements. So this is going to be along that same guideline. I'll be very quick with this one. Is before we do any lift, especially if you're bending over, picking anything up, you want to save your back. So we're going to take that big deep breath, expanding the rib cage, and I call it squeezing the lemons. My previous coach, Josh, gave me this one. I want you to imagine you've got lemons, maybe he said oranges, lemons underneath your armpits, and you're trying to squeeze those armpits, or your arms so close to your armpit that you're squeezing the lemon juice out. And you don't want to let that lemon go. When I do this, pause. When I do, let me show you the difference. Not engaged upper body during my hip hinge. The hips are still moving in a good spot, but you notice that little curve. I don't have a neutral spine. I kind of got that S curve in my spine right now. If I am bracing the core, all of a sudden we see this neutral spine taking place, and I'm squeezing the lemons. I want you to also think about showing your elbows, the difference being from here to here. That's going to help make sure the back is engaged. And now all of a sudden, when I start doing this hip hinge, my whole upper body is engaged, neutral spine, looking good. Cool. What's the other mistake? I think those are the big 2. But doing it that second way is really going to make sure you're not putting a lot of strain on your back. So let's talk about, girl, hold on. Sometimes we need a little bevy break. Okay, we're out of breath. That's okay. Gotta do more cardio. Make sure you do your cardio. So let's go over a few drills. How can we do this? First things first, find yourself that wall like we talked about earlier. Step out so you get to a comfortable hinge, and then just drill, sending the hips back. That's all we're doing, is trying to send the hips back. And you can challenge yourself, really trying to send them back more and more. But caveat to this, when we get to the point where we're like, yay, and now our hips aren't coming back any further, we're just kind of bending forwards. You see the difference? That's about where the hinge stops. And now I'm just reaching forward. At that point, your back is going to be helping out and taking over. So make sure that when you are hinging, you're getting far enough back, but not so far that we're no longer moving and we're just putting extra tension. So find that sweet spot, that Goldilocks spot. Here's one drill that I really love to use with people who are really struggling with this. One thing to note is when we're hip hinging, we're not squatting. Oh, that's the other mistake I see a lot, is a lot of times we'll want to kind of do this motion during the RDL, and we're getting a lot more quads, a lot more squat out of this. And yes, like the hips are going back. That's great. But when we have too much knee bend, again, it's going to put it in the quads, and that's not good if we want to train the booty cheeks. Okay. So in order to target this badonkey, what we're going to have to do is make sure that the legs are slight bend. Okay. Slight bend. This is not a lunge. This is a hinge. Okay. So one thing that you can really do is keep an eye on your shins. When you're doing this, if you're squatting, notice how my shins, and when I'm talking about shins, I mean the spot from ankle to knee, that is coming forward a little bit as I'm squatting. They're coming forward. Keep your shins vertical in a hinge. So if we're hinging, here's a squat. Okay, you see already, I'm not even going to squat all the way. You see it already. Here's the hinge. The shins are vertical. Okay, so one thing you can do is get a bench. I didn't want to steal a bench from the workout area, so I grabbed a box, but a bench is usually somewhere between 17 to 20 inches in height. So you can always add a plate if you need a little bit more height onto it. But this is about a 20-inch box, 20-inch box. So with this, what we're going to do is you're going to get all the way back up against the bench so that it's right below your knee. You do not want it in your knee crevice. You want it just below. And this is going to be a drill to help you keep those knees vertical. This is a great drill if you're somebody who is struggling with coming forward. You're going to keep those shins, and really your calves now, glued to the back of this, and you're just going to hinge backwards and try and reach the back of the... Make sure it's sturdy. You're going to reach your hips back and make sure that your shins stay vertical, and all of a sudden, you can feel your booty cheeks go, oh, baby, I'm getting active. I know what we're doing now. So this is a really great drill. I'm just going to grab one dumbbell. You don't need to go too crazy. But a really great drill to keep in mind. You're squeezing those lemons, big breath to brace the spine, and then you're keeping your calves against the box. And make sure when we're doing this too, this is just another note, keep your head just neutral to your spine. Okay, you notice, ooh, the booty cheeks. Notice also the weight. I'm shaving my legs with it. It's very close to my body. Your arms are just meat hangers here. When we're hinging, the vertical shins and the butt comes back. Make sure it's sturdy. Cool. If you have questions, put your questions in there. I'm going to move on. What's the last drill? Oh, here's a really good one. Give me just a second to set this one up. But here's a great thing if you're struggling to get the feeling of the hips being the one thing that is moving. Is this enough? You can take a band. These are common in any gym. And I would recommend tying it to something that is actually hip height, but we're doing our best with what we got here. Stepping in. And you're going to put it right at the hip bone, right where if you bend over, like that's where the spot is for you to bend over. And I'm a little tight for room here, but you're going to come forward so that there's tension on the band, much more tension than I'm doing right now, but I think I'm a lot heavier than 40 pounds, so these dumbbells might go flying. But again, we're in our stance, big breath, feet are hip width apart, squeezing the lemons, and I'm gonna allow the tension of the band to pull my hips back. And without thinking, let me move my hands, without thinking, this just pulls your hips back automatically. So this is a really good drill for you to do in your warm-ups. If you just want to work on some skill work, this would be really great to start your warm-ups with your weight, a lighter weight, and just get the hips back and pull, and making sure that you have a nice squeeze at the top. Remember our RDLs, we don't want to do this business. We're trying to save the lower back, okay? We're not trying to break it. So when we come up, make sure you've got tension, but you're not like completely straight. Still a little bit of a bend in the knee will keep the tension in the booty cheeks. Pro tip. So as we're doing this, making sure that this band has enough tension is going to be really important. Otherwise, you're not going to feel the pull from the right place. But moving my arms out of the way. See the hinge? Okay, moving the hips back. I'm so close to smashing my face on this wall. Cool. Okay. Let me just demonstrate what the hinge looks like in several different movements. Shocker, we're going to start with an RDL. That's what a lot of people are doing this with. So let me grab these dumbbells and then we'll go over it. To review, our hip hinge. we're hip RDL. Maybe let me know if we want to do a whole RDL specific video, and we'll do that. But in your RDL, what we're trying to do in a glute bias RDL, okay, is we're trying to keep more of a bend in the knee, and we're trying to hinge those hips back, baby. So your hip hinge in your RDL is going to look like this. That's it. That's the hip hinge. Yeah? Instead of, you see how my back is like doing everything? Ooh, I'm looking at my reflection like, girl, that does not look like a good time. We're sending those hips back, keeping the spine neutral, okay? Another movement where you're gonna use this is your squat. I know we've talked about vertical shins and all of that jazz, so just inhale, exhale, and understand what I'm talking about. So when we're squatting, and I'm talking any type of squat really, what we need to do is like, if we drop straight down, like for a lot of people, myself included, the mobility is just not there to keep heels on the ground, unless you're my client Alice, who has exceptional mobility in this. Alice, if you're watching. Yep. So with this, the reason, and we actually did this yesterday, Alice and I, was when you're in your squat, if we just drop straight down, showing you this way, there's really like nowhere for me to go other than like kind of forward. But in your squat, I want you to imagine, okay, we got our dumbbells up here. Can you see that? Okay. Instead of just dropping down here, if I lean forward with just a slight hinge and then squat down, all of a sudden I have a lot more room to be squatting. So here it is again, just general squat first. I can't even get, unless my heels come up, I can't even get down further. But if I start with hinging slightly and then dropping down, that squat, oh, the cardio, as Alice likes to describe, free cardio. I hope that makes sense. I'm kind of out of breath. But RDL, squat, barbell back squat. If you're up here, we're going to start with this. It may not look like this all the time, but you'll notice really good lifters are sending the hips back more than they are coming forward, unless it's specifically for like your quads, if they're trying to target different parts, which that's actually a good thing to touch on. Please keep in mind that these variations are typically more glute biased because that's typically what my girlies are wanting. However, there are different variations and different stances to target and bias different areas of the body. So keep in mind that what I'm teaching today may or may not be best for you and your goals and your body type. Cool? Oh, baby, I'm out of breath. So squatting, right? I do this kind of automatically. Hips come back first and then coming down. You're also going to do a hip hinge and a lunge. So if I am trying to bias, and this could even be a split squat thing. Actually, maybe I'll show that too. In a lunge, if I am simply dropping straight down, it's going to be a lot more quads. If we want to target the glutes, we're gonna, you guessed it, hinge so that the glutes can help take over. And in, can you see me? Ooh, my foot is still a little bum, but in, dang it, I'm just gonna use the bum foot. We're gonna take it easy. Don't. For your Bulgarian split squat specifically, if we are wanting to bias the glutes, so here's your split squat, like just generally straight up and down, right? Lots of quads happening. If we want to get the glutes, what are we going to do? Hinge and sit back, just like your RDL. It's just biomechanics. It's just anatomy. So if you have questions, let's go over it now. Let me look at my girlies first and see if we have any questions. Questions, ladies, questions? I know it's kind of a re-overview. Okay, this is going to be a little clunky because I'm just going to turn this around. Hold on. Okay. Is it happening? It's happening. Okay. What up, gang? So let us talk about, oh, hi, Easton. I don't know if you're still here. Oh, sorry, girls. Can you see me? Can everybody see me? Okay. Hi, Easton. Good to see you. Actually, I'm just going to do this. So sorry, ladies, you can see my camera a little bit, but that's okay. Questions? Does anybody have any questions? I feel like this will take me a minute to get, LOL. This is from Octavia. She's actually someone who has done my 6-week Kickstarter. So if you don't necessarily want full coaching, quick plug, I do offer programs as well that are completely customized to you. So with that in mind, yeah, it should. This is not something that you're going to show up and within a week master. Keep in mind, I've been doing this for 10 years. Okay, this is not my first rodeo. But it's important. I'm really glad you brought this up, Octavia, because it's really important to note that where I'm at in my journey is not where you're at in your journey, and that's okay. It's expected, actually. So I would recommend then, if this is a skill, I mean, it should be a skill you want to work on, especially if you want to pick anything up literally ever, make sure that you are practicing this at least once a week. And in your lifts, if you're doing your RDLs, if you're doing squats, whatever it is you're doing, just think to yourself, hips, back. Practice it at least once a week when you're doing your lifts, and eventually you will get there in no time. I say no time. Maybe a year, maybe 2 years. I don't know. I've been working with Alice for over a year, and she's really just kind of grasping the single leg hip hinge too. Because keep in mind, doing it on both legs is one thing, but on another leg, it can be really tricky. So Perez_Beth90 said, when I do this, my back curves at the end. Ooh, okay. When you say your back curves at the end, I'm not sure if you mean lower or upper. Let me fix my girls over here. Can we see? Can we see? Can we see? Okay. If you're doing these and your back is curving here, that is a core issue. That means we're not bracing, we're not taking our breath, and you're not protecting your spine, because if I do that, and even try, I literally can't do it if I try to do that way. However, so, okay, what I would work on if that's your case is practicing breathing, and there's a really good drill. I don't have a PVC pipe, but one thing that can really help with your spine is if you get a PVC pipe and you just put it between your arms. Obviously, I have to hold one up here because this is flimsy. It's not erect, as we liked to say in our last live. Keeping this, if you're hinging properly, the PVC pipe will follow your spine, and if you're not, it'll kind of break and roll off. So it might be good for you to try doing it that way. But I would also say, if you're struggling to keep your if you're struggling to keep your back from curving, doing this on the floor and practicing from lying on the ground on your back and just trying to close the distance from here to here and practicing keeping your ribs over your pelvis, that will automatically flatten your back. And if you lay on the ground on your back and you can feel the space between your back and the ground, try and close it. Oh, my arms are in the way. You're here, try and close it. I also like to imagine that I am sipping a milkshake, a really thick milkshake, through my urethra. Pretty, you're welcome. Because when you do this and you imagine that, you really kind of clench and tighten your whole pelvic floor area. And so when you're clenching your pelvic floor, it's going to make it that much more easy to stay stable. So I hope that helps. Girl, I really got to do more cardio. This is kind of whack. Octavia, good. I'm glad that helps. Yeah, girl, just practice it as often as you can, and you'll get there in time, but it will take time. Okay, Sade. That is our demonstration on how to hip hinge. So I think we're Gucci. I'll stay for like 1 more minute in case anybody does have some additional questions. I'm gonna go ahead and move you guys back and move my girlies up. And then girlies, after this minute, we are gonna go into our typical scheduled programming for our group coaching call. So if you have questions you wanna bring up to the group, go ahead, raise your hand in the chat, and we'll start with you. In the meantime, I am just going to screenshot so that if you did leave a question, I can reach out and make sure that you got your question answered. Cool. All right, homies. I'm going to let you go. I hope that this was helpful. And I will post a poll on my story again afterwards, asking what topic we want to talk about next week. For my girlies here, I'll ask you as well. Cool. All right. Bye, Instagram, and we'll switch to our group coaching call.